maybe speak to how then seeing, assuming that Salesforce is your system of record, then how do you position Salesforce as a tool to support your entire client's journey? So thinking about how you reach across the aisle and really support other organizations or operations teams you might be interacting with, or what are some things to consider in choosing Salesforce and implementing that?
Well, I'll just jump in. I think, from my point of view, one of the first questions that I always ask about any new process that we're setting up is, how are we going to report on it, and how does the information that comes out of that, the data that comes out of that process relative to the customer experience, how does it end up back in Salesforce? So, there are, like I mentioned, a number of different tools that we use that would sit on top of that, but to have that the central version of the truth is so key for us. But it's also a challenge, and I'm curious how, Josh, y'all are solving this. I know Chandler and Michael, you see this all the time in your work, but it's also not a data warehouse, right? It's not designed to be a data warehouse. It can get very expensive if you use it that way. So, I guess I'll pose a question back out to everyone else too. So how do you use Salesforce without it becoming a data warehouse and racking up massive amounts of data that aren't very easy for people to actually use to get meaningful information out of it about the customer base?
Yeah, I like how you started with the how. How are we going to do this? I like to follow that up with why. Why do we want to do this? What is it? What problem is it going to solve? Because I think we all face the challenge of too many data fields within Salesforce. Because everybody wants to get something out of it. So making sure that everybody has a good understanding of why we want to go about this, how's it going to solve the problem, but not become overwhelming. Because I think Salesforce is best used when it's as simple as possible for users to take part in importing information and viewing information. At the same time, there's a lot of things we need to do. So getting that why question asked, and then having the different business unit leaders agree upon what they're trying to do, why they're trying to do it, and have a general consensus across the board, which isn't always easy, but that can certainly help with the strategic vision of how to roll out the technology.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think from my experience, it sounds like one of the principles we need to lean on is to have a collective understanding of what these tools are going to be. So a clear understanding that we're not going to build Salesforce to become our data warehouse, and instead that data warehouse will have its own strategy, obviously depending on your organization. But I think starting with an understanding of where does Salesforce start and stop, and where is it in terms of our overall tech strategy, and that'll really help you understand once you identify the process, really understand why you want to implement that process. Then the decision on where to implement that becomes a bit easier, right? And it's not that you lead with, hey, Salesforce is a shiny object, it can solve all my needs, let me go shove everything in it. You really start with process, like you mentioned, Joshua, and start with an understanding of principally, how does this tool fit into my total tech stack? Any other thoughts from
the most the saddest thing I've ever seen is Salesforce used purely as a pipeline management tool for sales, right? I mean, to your point, Chandler, you don't want to go getting enamored with it and build things that you can't maintain, but there's just a lot of power in a platform that allows you to customize so heavily to, I mean, every single Salesforce instance is unique, which is probably why OpFocus has such a great business, right?
Yeah.
But in my mind, you think about the customer journey, the conversations that you had pre-sales that led to a booking, that led to a new customer coming on board. Those just keep going, just right through the relationship, right? And so every piece of the customer journey, the relationships that we have along the way need to be tracked in Salesforce. The touch points that we have with those people need to be tracked in Salesforce. The keynotes, the health of the customer. There's just so many different data points that can really fit in there to help you piece together a full story about what's going on with the customer. One of the first things that I do, we use Gainsight. We also have Client Success as a customer success tool for a different part of our business. But one of the first things that I do when I am asked to get on the phone with a customer is I go straight to Salesforce to see what we've consolidated in there for both of those platforms around those customers, so I can have some context before it. So if you think about from the leadership perspective, how do we pump as much information into that repository as possible, but also make it consumable? So, really curious how others are doing that. Even folks that are just attending the panel discussion here today, would love to hear how others are getting that concise view without being too much data, and being able to get the main points of the relationship across.